1. You're deeply curious. Let's start with one of the most powerful, yet most overlooked, signs of above-average intelligence. Deep curiosity. Not the kind of curiosity where you casually wonder how something works and move on, but a persistent, inner pull. A magnetic need to understand, to know, to uncover what's beneath the surface. For highly intelligent people, curiosity isn't a hobby, it's a compulsion. When something sparks your interest, you don't let it go. Maybe you hear a new word and spend hours chasing its origin. Or someone mentions a historical event, and suddenly you're deep in a documentary, reading articles, pulling up timelines. Or you're watching a movie, and one scene leads you down a rabbit hole of science, symbolism, or psychology. For you, questions don't create anxiety. They create momentum. The question isn't, do I need to know this? It's, how could I possibly move on without knowing more? This kind of curiosity often starts early. As a child, maybe you asked why so many times that adults got tired of answering. You wanted to know how things worked. Why rules existed. What made people act the way they did. You weren't trying to be difficult. You were trying to make sense of a world that felt too shallow for your depth. Over time, that curiosity didn't fade. It grew. And unlike many people, you didn't stop learning just because school ended. Curious minds are multidimensional. You might find yourself obsessed with one subject for weeks, then suddenly switch to something entirely unrelated. 1 month you're learning about quantum mechanics. The next, you're reading philosophy or trying to understand the stock market. You don't just want facts, you want frameworks. You want perspective. This isn't randomness. It's your brain trying to build connections between distant ideas. It's how inventors invent, how artists innovate, how leaders anticipate the future. It's how genius operates, by combining curiosity with creativity. Now here's something most people miss. Curiosity isn't always convenient. In fact, it often disrupts your routine. You might get distracted from your work because a new question enters your mind. You might stay up too late watching videos or reading threads, trying to understand something fully. People might even tell you to stop overthinking or just let it go. But you can't. Because to you, a loose thread isn't something to ignore, it's something to pull. And when you pull it, you often discover what most others missed entirely. Here's where curiosity becomes power. The more you explore, the more you understand. The more you understand, the more you connect ideas. And the more you connect, the more original your thinking becomes. That's why curious people are often innovators. They don't follow trends, they start them. They don't just memorize, they synthesize. They take what they've learned from 100 different places and turn it into something new. Neuroscience even backs this up. When you're curious, your brain activates its reward system, the same one used for food or dopamine-inducing behaviors. Learning literally becomes pleasurable. It feels good to learn. It becomes addictive, in the best possible way. This is why intelligent people often describe learning as fun, satisfying, or even emotional. Their curiosity lights up their brain like a superpower. And once that fire is lit, it's nearly impossible to extinguish. So why does this matter? Because in today's world, information is everywhere. But curiosity? That's rare. The difference between someone who scrolls aimlessly and someone who searches purposefully is curiosity. It's the difference between passively consuming and actively creating, between watching life happen and designing your own. Curiosity also shapes your sense of purpose. You don't just want a job, you want meaning. You don't just want answers, you want truth. You don't just want comfort, you want growth. And that's what makes you different from the average thinker. You're not chasing distractions. You're chasing understanding. And that journey, that hunger, that's the first and clearest sign that you think like a prodigy. So ask yourself, do you find yourself diving deep into random topics? Do you feel excited when you don't know something, because it means you get to learn it? Do you lose track of time chasing questions no one else seems to care about? If so, that's not a quirk. That's not a distraction. That's intelligence at work. 2. You prefer solitude over crowds. We live in a world that worships connection. Constant contact. Endless notifications. Busy social calendars. But here's something few people admit. Some of the most intelligent minds prefer to be alone. It's not arrogance. It's not shyness. It's something deeper. If you're the kind of person who needs regular solitude, not just to relax, but to recharge, to think clearly, to feel like yourself again, that could be a powerful sign that your brain operates on a higher level. Let's break it down. Solitude isn't loneliness. Loneliness is the absence of people. Solitude is the presence of yourself. And highly intelligent people often crave this kind of space. Why? Because the average mind is externally focused, seeking validation, noise, distraction. But the above-average mind is internally rich. When you're alone, you're not bored. You're alive. You think deeply. You make connections. You process the world on your own terms. In solitude, your thoughts have room to breathe. There's no pressure to perform. No masks to wear. No expectations to fulfill. It's just you and your mind. And that's where clarity lives. That's where insights are born. That's where creativity thrives. From Einstein to Newton to Virginia Woolf, some of history's most brilliant people did their best work alone. Not because they hated people, but because they loved thinking. Now let's talk honestly. If you're highly intelligent, social events can sometimes feel draining. Not because you're antisocial, but because shallow interaction exhausts your energy. Small talk feels meaningless. Loud environments overwhelm your senses. And group dynamics can seem chaotic, unpredictable, or even irrational. Instead, you crave depth. One meaningful conversation over 10 casual ones. Time spent thinking over time spent performing. This isn't social awkwardness. It's cognitive preference. Your mind prefers quality over quantity. Psychologists have even studied this. In a large-scale study, researchers found that highly intelligent individuals experience less happiness from frequent social interaction. Why? Because their fulfillment doesn't come from being entertained by others. It comes from stimulating their own mind. They don't just want attention. They want purpose, insight, a sense of inner direction. Solitude provides that. Solitude is the breeding ground of mastery. In those quiet hours, you learn. You build. You transform. You read books that challenge your thinking. You watch lectures no one else talks about. You build skills in private, while others are posting online. And while some people fear being alone, you thrive in it. You don't just tolerate silence. You seek it, because that's where real thought happens. Now let's talk about something personal. If you're highly intelligent, you might often feel like you're acting around others. You pick up on social cues quickly. You know what people want to hear. You play the role, because it's easier than explaining who you really are. But after a while, that gets tiring. That's why solitude feels like freedom. It's the one place you can drop the mask. Be honest. Be strange. Be real. Not because you're antisocial, but because you're hyper-aware. Your sensitivity, your empathy, your emotional intelligence. They make social interaction complex and exhausting. So, you return to stillness. To regain your mental clarity. This isn't about isolation. It's about intention. You might have a few close friends. The ones you trust completely. People who understand you without needing explanation. But you don't need a crowd to feel whole. Your inner world is vast enough. And that's the secret most people miss. The smarter the mind, the more it finds meaning in stillness. In solitude, you grow roots. You find your voice. You explore your fears. You evolve your thinking. And when you return to the world, you bring something richer than noise. You bring substance. Solitude isn't a flaw. It's your mind's way of protecting itself, nurturing itself, elevating itself. So ask yourself, do you often crave alone time without feeling lonely? Do you process your emotions better when you're alone? Do you feel more yourself when the world is quiet? If so, that's not a weakness. That's not weirdness. That's intelligence seeking clarity. And it's one of the most consistent signs of a high-functioning, deeply introspective mind. So far, we've explored curiosity, the mind's hunger for truth, and solitude, the mind's space for growth. Both are quiet. Both are subtle. But both are powerful signs that you might think like a prodigy. Next, we'll uncover a third sign, one that often gets you labeled as difficult, challenging, or even rebellious. But it might just be your most undeniable proof of higher intelligence. Stick around. 3. You constantly question authority and norms. Have you ever been told, you ask too many questions? Just follow the rules. Why can't you just go along with it? If so, you might carry one of the boldest signs of high intelligence. You question the system. You challenge norms. You don't just accept ideas, you interrogate them. From an early age, intelligent minds often clash with structure. Not because they're disrespectful, but because they're mentally independent. When the teacher says something doesn't make sense, you notice. When society tells you what to value, you pause. When everyone rushes in one direction, you step back and ask, why? This resistance to blind obedience is not arrogance. It's awareness. Highly intelligent individuals have what psychologists call a low need for cognitive closure. In simple terms, they're comfortable with uncertainty. They don't need black and white answers. They can live in the gray. And they'd rather have a difficult truth than a comfortable lie. That's why you might notice something strange. When the world says, this is the way it's always been, you feel an inner pull. Then maybe it's time to change it. Here's the uncomfortable reality. Most systems rely on conformity. Schools, companies, governments, they function by getting people to follow, not question. But genius questions everything. You ask, is this rule serving a purpose or just tradition? Is this belief still useful or is it outdated? Are we doing this because it works or because no one's brave enough to try something better? These aren't acts of rebellion. They're acts of clarity. You're not trying to destroy systems. You're trying to improve them. Intelligent people think in layers. You see the surface, then the hidden structure beneath it. You see how rules are made, then how they could be remade. You challenge what's broken, not because you're negative, but because you believe we can do better. And you often start with yourself. You question your own thinking, your own beliefs. You're not afraid to admit when you're wrong, because growth matters more than ego. That's rare. That's powerful. That's intelligence at work. This kind of mental independence doesn't always win you praise. In fact, you may often feel like the odd one out. You might notice patterns others ignore, corruption others excuse, flaws others accept. And when you speak up, it can feel like swimming against the tide. You may get labeled as difficult, intense, too serious, or even dangerous. But the truth? You're not a threat. You're a mirror. You reflect back the uncomfortable questions others don't want to face. And it goes deeper. You don't just challenge authority, you challenge norms. You don't automatically accept the career path everyone says is secure. The life script that says, get married, buy a house, retire. The unspoken rule that says, don't ask hard questions. You see that the default path is often designed for average results. And you want something more. Not just success alignment. Not just status, truth. Einstein once said, blind belief in authority is the greatest enemy of truth. And that's the mindset of a highly intelligent person. You don't worship authority. You evaluate it. You don't reject leadership, you demand accountability. You don't attack systems, you upgrade them. You are willing to stand alone, if it means standing on the side of truth. And that's not easy. It takes courage to challenge what others accept. It takes vision to imagine something better. It takes intellect to break free from the mental programming most people never question. Whether it's politics, culture, science, or even social norms. Smart people often play the role of disruptor. But it's not disruption for the sake of chaos. It's disruption for the sake of evolution. You're not here to fit in. You're here to elevate. And to do that, you have to ask uncomfortable questions. Questions others are too afraid to ask. You might be ignored at first. Even ridiculed. But the most intelligent people in history, that's how many of them started. Until the world caught up. So let's reflect. Do you constantly find yourself questioning rules and traditions? Do you value logic over hierarchy? Have you ever felt alienated, simply because you refuse to think like everyone else? If so, that isn't rebellion. That's not defiance. That's intellectual integrity. And it's one of the clearest signs that you think like a genius. So far, we've seen the mind's hunger for truth, curiosity, the soul's need for clarity, solitude, and the courage to challenge illusion, questioning authority. 4. You overthink almost everything. Let's be honest. There are times when your mind just won't shut off. It loops. It analyzes. It questions everything. What someone said. What you said. What might happen. What didn't happen. You find yourself going over conversations, decisions, future outcomes, again and again. And while some people might call that overthinking, it might actually be something else. A sign of intelligence. You see, overthinking isn't just anxiety. It's often the result of a mind that's hyper-aware. Your brain notices details others miss. You see patterns, contradictions, deeper meanings, instantly. You're not just reacting. You're processing. And that takes time. Mental energy. Space. So yes, you might overthink. But it's not a flaw. It's your intelligence trying to make sense of a complex world. Overthinking isn't just about worry. It's often about depth. You don't accept surface-level answers. You want to understand the why, the how, the what if. You play out scenarios. You mentally rehearse outcomes. You reflect constantly on your actions and the actions of others. This isn't mental weakness. It's mental simulation. It's your brain running models, trying to reduce risk, anticipate consequences, prepare for reality. Researchers have studied this phenomenon. Highly intelligent individuals often show higher cognitive complexity, meaning they can hold multiple conflicting ideas in their mind at once. But that comes with a cost. Mental noise. Your brain doesn't settle for good enough. It keeps digging, keeps asking, keeps processing. This is why you might take longer to make decisions, or why you sometimes struggle to let go of small interactions. It's not because you're insecure. It's because you're thorough. Let's say you had an awkward conversation. Someone else might forget it in 5 minutes. But you replay it. What did they mean by that tone? Did I sound rude? Should I have phrased that differently? Not because you enjoy the stress, but because you care about precision, about communication, about truth. You're not overthinking. You're post-processing. That's a strength, not a flaw. The more intelligent you are, the more you understand how complex the world really is. And that understanding? It can be overwhelming. You see every outcome, every possibility, every domino that could fall if just one thing goes wrong. So you prepare. You overanalyze. You rehearse life in your head because it gives you control in a world that rarely offers it. But here's the paradox. The smarter your mind, the harder it is to find peace. Even when you try to relax, your brain keeps thinking. You're mentally solving problems, untangling conversations, revisiting the past or preparing for the future. You may have tried mindfulness, journaling, breathing, and still the thoughts return. This is where intelligence and sensitivity collide. Because often, highly intelligent people are also highly emotionally attuned. They don't just analyze situations, they analyze feelings. Their own, others, the unspoken tension in a room, the mood behind a sentence, the silence between words. You observe what most people overlook, and then you internalize it. That's why overthinking often isn't just thoughts. It's emotional thought. It's did I hurt them? Why did that feel off? Was I misunderstood? Am I being too much or not enough? These are the kinds of questions that intelligent, emotionally aware people ask every day. Not because they're unsure of themselves, but because they're aware of others. Here's the hidden truth. The price of intelligence is often restlessness. The more you see, the harder it is to ignore. The more you understand, the harder it is to accept ignorance. The more possibilities you imagine, the harder it is to feel certain. But that doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're deep. It means your mind doesn't settle for shallow answers. It means you care about your impact. It means you're thinking beyond the surface. So let's reframe this. What if your overthinking isn't something to fix, but something to understand? What if it's a signal of deep empathy, a sign of critical analysis, a product of long-range thinking, and proof that your mind is always evolving? Yes, it can be tiring. Yes, it can lead to anxiety, but it also leads to insight, to self-awareness, to growth. Because every time you overthink, you also rethink. And that's how wisdom is born. So ask yourself, do you struggle to turn your mind off? Do you replay conversations, outcomes, choices? Do people tell you you're too in your head? If so, that's not weakness. That's not dysfunction. That's a complex, intelligent mind doing what it was built to do. Reflect, refine, and evolve. 5. You feel emotions deeply and pick up on others' feelings instantly. Some people walk into a room and feel nothing. Others, they feel everything. The tension in the air, the shift in someone's tone, the look in someone's eyes, even if they're smiling. A strange energy you can't quite explain. If that's you, you may have one of the most powerful and misunderstood forms of intelligence. Emotional sensitivity. You're the kind of person who can sense when someone is upset before they say a word. You read the emotional temperature in a room like a thermostat. And while others need drama or breakdowns to recognize a problem, you pick up on the quiet discomfort, the shift in rhythm, the unspoken. This is called empathic intelligence, and it often runs parallel with high IQ. Emotionally intelligent people listen with their whole presence, sense when someone's lying or holding back, feel things intensely, even from art, music, or memory. This intensity isn't weakness. It's not being too emotional. It's emotional depth. And depth is a sign of genius. It's also why you may feel emotionally exhausted sometimes. You absorb moods like a sponge. You feel the weight of injustice, sadness, even global events. When the world suffers, you feel it personally. Because your mind isn't just smart. It's connected. Here's what many people miss. Intelligence isn't just about data and logic. It's also about emotional insight, understanding the why behind behavior, anticipating reactions, reading body language, subtext, micro-expressions. That's not guesswork. That's intelligence, emotional precision. And it's rare. But here's the catch. Emotionally intelligent people often feel isolated. Because they see too much, feel too deeply, understand things others ignore. It's not easy living with an open heart in a guarded world. But this is your gift. You have the power to heal, to connect, to understand, beyond the surface. So, ask yourself, do you feel drained after social situations, even without conflict? Do you just know when someone's hiding pain? Have you cried over beauty, art, music, or other people's pain? If yes, that's not softness. That's genius with empathy. And in a world starving for understanding, it's one of the most valuable kinds there is. 6. You have a vivid inner world and a wild, creative imagination. When you were a kid, did you dream whole worlds? Did you invent stories in your head, draw creatures that didn't exist, or create entire conversations in silence? And as an adult, do you still drift off into ideas, visions, what-ifs? That inner world? It's not just fantasy. It's creative intelligence. And it's one of the most underappreciated signs of genius. People with powerful imaginations often live in two realities. The outer world, where things are expected, routine, logical. And the inner world, where anything is possible. You might visualize conversations before they happen. See music as color. Solve problems with metaphors, art, or unconventional ideas. You don't just think, you create. And creation is the highest form of intelligence. Albert Einstein once said, "Imagination is more important than knowledge." Why? Because knowledge is limited to what we already know. But imagination is infinite. It creates what never existed. Smart people may follow the rules, but geniuses imagine new ones. In neuroscience, this is called divergent thinking. It's the ability to see many possible solutions to one problem. While others ask, "What's the right answer?" you ask, "What are the other answers no one's thought of yet?" That's why you may excel in art, writing, music, coding, design. Or you may struggle to explain your ideas because they're too abstract at first. Your mind builds worlds, not just answers. Sometimes, your imagination feels like a storm. Ideas come faster than you can write them. You dream in metaphors. You speak in analogies. You get lost in ideas others can't even see. But this is your superpower. Because every invention, every movement, every work of art began in someone's imagination. So if you've ever been called a daydreamer, too abstract, too sensitive to fantasy, or not realistic enough, you're in the company of visionaries. From Tesla to Da Vinci, from Maya Angelou to Steve Jobs, the people who changed the world were the ones who first imagined it differently. So ask yourself, do you get lost in thought for hours at a time? Do you create things in your head no one else can see? Have you ever felt like reality is just the launch pad for something greater? If so, you don't just think, you dream. And those dreams are your mind's blueprint for brilliance. Let's pause. So far, we've uncovered 6 powerful signs of above-average intelligence. Deep, unstoppable curiosity. Love for solitude and inner growth. Questioning of authority and systems. Overthinking as a form of mental precision. Emotional sensitivity and empathy. A vivid, limitless imagination. But we're far from done. Let's take a moment to pause. Because if you recognized yourself in even one of these signs, you might not just be smart. You might be something far more powerful. Intellectually awake. You question. You observe. You feel deeply. You imagine endlessly. And in a world that often rewards noise over depth, that makes you rare. You see, intelligence doesn't always look like perfect grades or loud opinions. Sometimes, it looks like silence, curiosity, imagination, and quiet reflection. It's time we stop measuring intelligence by what's visible, and start honoring the invisible brilliance that lives inside people like you. Because deep thinkers don't just follow paths. They create them. If you felt seen, understood, or inspired by this video, you're not alone. This channel is a space for thinkers, feelers, questioners, and quiet rebels. So if that's you, hit subscribe, tap the notification bell, and leave a comment sharing which sign resonated most with you. Was it your imagination? Your empathy? Your love for solitude? Let's start a conversation, one that values depth over noise. And remember, in a world full of echo chambers, being a deep thinker is your superpower. Keep questioning, keep learning, keep evolving, and above all, think like a prodigy.